Here assumed ethically, which is in one justification my framework is said the D justifies his framework. Then go to the off on the Goldman evidence. So I'm winning that there's some net benefit in terms of excusability versus permissibility that is linking back to the Harris framework. That's a 100% conceded. Mill has two evidence, and he says he's not talking about BWS, but that is not about BWS, and it's 100% conceded Harris evidence. Then go to Goldman. Extended deadly force can only be morally permissible if it is a response to objectively a threat because human life has the highest value and the defense of conduct must be justified, must be narrowly circumscribed. Then extend the broad evidence that statistically most domestic violence is not rise to the level of severity to justify the use of deadly force as a general principle, which means that it is the affirmative cannot justify any general principle of deadly force in response to domestic violence fails to increase the severity standard in threat. That means that you can never affirm the resolution because my argument is that it is not affirming it, he's not meeting his burden of affirming it as a general principle. This is 100% conceded the broad evidence. Then go to Kaufman. This is providing additional offenses and undermining the strand of imminence and self-defense sentence in life by justifying vigilantes and extra-legal violence because people reported vigilante adjustment. And then, for example, the example is that the lynching of blacks in the South was defended on the ground that the state punishment was in the state of nature. This functions my argument. This functions or takes out the or functions in turn of the AC because my argument is that in the state of nature, my argument is that it would be worse to justify things because there's a state of nature because it would increase the violence that occurs in terms of the agent. He is also dropping that implication. Then on the AC. Okay. So. The problem with his response to the nearby motion evidence, he says that it's just a fallacy of origin argument. This is not a fallacy of origin argument. My argument is that there's no external criteria for success in terms of rational agency because when you're just saying that you're a rational agent, so therefore you have to follow your reasons. My argument is not a fallacy of origin argument, that is wrong because it's a fallacy. My argument is that is wrong because there's no external criteria to justify that in the first place, i.e. it is self-justifying, which means that it's a distinct fallacy. That means he has no response to this argument. It means that it is a taken out of his angstrom out of the course guard of the Ripson evidence because there's no external criteria of success to be able to justify this framework. Our Harrison evidence by comparison is this external criteria because it says that the fact that we have reasons for valuing our own lives externally, or the fact that we have reasons for valuing our own lives, or give that value. Remember, you should not let him do any application to this or comparison in the next speech because he did not do it in the last speech. Then, so that takes out his framework. Then go to the contention on Thompson. Extend my number two response to number one response to Thompson, which you dropped. There's no warrant for why state rights equal individual rights. And whenever you give consent to the state in terms of when you are an individual, that does not mean that your individual rights are the exact same thing as your state right, which means that there is literally several links between the state of nature argument and the individual argument that he's which means that all of his other arguments that he's extending is often rely on our argument, except that it takes out the London evidence and the Condon evidence and the Ripson 2 evidence because his right of self-defense assumes that there is a state of nature. That extending number two that is you can infer subjectivity, you can never tell at which point there is a state of nature in the first place, which means that you can never establish a reason for why we would get offense in the framework, so he does not get offense. Then go to the Quinn. Except the Quinn evidence, the moral forfeiture does not justify reciprocal violations because it doesn't move the response is permissible. Just most critics of both are wrong to begin with. That is the Quinn 2 evidence. That is the Quinn 2 evidence because he's not committing his burden of permissibility on the argument. He's saying that so the way around extends this. He's saying that I'm running necessary and insufficient burdens. He has a very unclear interpretation of this. He says he is stepping a bunch of things, but his the paper says legal constraints are necessary and insufficient burdens. He's shifting out of this interpretation to one area. You should not let him get out of this because I'm meeting his interpretation. I'm not running any necessary and insufficient burdens because I'm saying that if he proves that moral excusability is less important than moral permissibility, that he would affirm it. It's not about legal constraints. Then you go to the NC, then you go to the M.
So we're going to start on theory, and then I'll signpost from there. Everyone ready? There are two ways to construct the act valid. The first way is very easy, and that is off the theory, because he conceded most of the shell in the AC. The second way is off of the AC, because none of his arguments are actually responded. The only stand is being stated in round. So, extend the interpretations, the act is not done right as insufficient verdict today, may not right as but insufficient verdicts in the violation that says, just proving that the action of the potential being justified is not sufficient to affirm. I prove that it is not excusable, then it's justifiable, then I prove it is permissible by some other constraint I cited to prove that the act is capable of being justifiable before I can prove it is actually justifiable. Then goes his response. Remember, this was in the 1AR and the NC. He's not actually responding to the actual argumentation. He's talking about shadiness, but at worst, it's a 1AR argument. You should evaluate it as a 1AR argument. So even if his arguments are true, and I was shady in the AC, then you should just evaluate it as a 1AR argument. And then he says there's no difference between moral and legal permissibility. My argument in the AC was very specific to excuse for justification. Do not give him leeway on arguments. His argument that is not legal still is very specific to excuse for justification, regardless of whether it's legal or moral. And two, you should just treat this as a 1AR argument. If you are going to give him credence on this, because my 1AR argument on the money, that's how he violates. He doesn't contest the fact that he doesn't violate. So go to the standard. It doesn't estimate fish burns, he grants that to meet the constraint and demonstrate moral permissibility, but some other measures, when no one does not accept the argument, the direct fairness, the basis in which argument of fairness is a reason to reject the debater because the gateway because the dispute, the abuse debater and dispute right against me. That's the easy way out. Then go to the AC framework. Extend the second work practice reason that background is a way to explain the personality more spontaneously possible. Whole AC count with the level of certain moral facts and operating in the first place from rationality. We can explain express requirements of operatory aim with another set angstrom. If you usually like universalize the mass between others, freedom, extend your own freedom, results, contradicts, rule of both extension, and limitation your own and others' freedom at the same time. He says there's no external criterion, but there's no other standard in the round. He's not extending some sort of value criterion. This Harris, he references Harris evidence. He never actually extended this Harris evidence. The only criterion in the round is mine. So, this is a rift to one that's this interpersonal affair, between form, black, self-set, your answer, preserving your own power, set the answer for yourself, suspend, preserving your right to honor. Rick Thompson. Except Thompson have during instances of best adopts when the state fails to obligation to protect citizens, expecting to the beating when the state fails to protect citizens, a temporary chain of nation seeks to contract between the citizens and the state, has been nullified the state doesn't uphold the intent of the bargain, through that any type of self-defense justifiable, has no control on action exists in the state of nature. There are those responses. He says that it's not about individuals. What call for the Thompson evidence is very specific that says that this is true for the individual as well. The evidence is very specific on this point. There is a warrant in the car. There's a warrant said. We never know. We never know when the next the state of nature is triggered. But AMI extension answers back to the state of nature is triggered when the state failed. It is due to protect citizens. That was the extension of Thompson. I don't understand why. This is a difficult for him to understand. And the political cars don't matter. Because I'm talking about the state of nature, not about moral forfeiture, but it's about the fact that the state of nature has been triggered. Not that one person is breaching the moral code, therefore he's outside of morality. So, the extension Thompson takes out A, the off case, because there are no constraints upon self-defense. So, regardless of whether he's saying the broad card, that doesn't matter. B, means the Milheiser evidence doesn't matter because there are no constraints on self-defense, which means death is still fine. So, he's not extending the Harris evidence. The Thompson evidence is the most important thing in terms of substance. The only standard is the app standard, and the easy way out, very easy way out, is theory, because you conceded most of it in the AC.